Pinpoint Weather University, sponsored by Gaston Roofing.
Welcome into Pinpoint Weather University. I'm meteorologist Brandon Lawson here on Queen City News Plus, and I'm dressed a little differently for this episode. I'm going outside today for this episode for most of it. We're going to be headed out to the Salisbury City Park, the Salisbury City Lake there, meeting up with Casey Joubert, who is a fishery biologist with the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, and she's going to be talking to us about how fish have been kind of struggling a bit with these warmer summers that we've been seeing, how it's changing their migrations, their ecosystems, how extreme weather has also been leading to more pollution of lakes and rivers and causing more issues for the fish. So we're essentially just talking about how our warming planet is causing issues not only for fish, but also making it harder for us to have success at the lake or the river while we're out fishing. So we'll talk with her about that coming up in the next couple of segments. That's why I don't have the dress shirt and tie on. But before we get to that, we've got to talk about this cold start to August that we have been dealing with. I want to show you just how dramatic of a change this has been when it comes down to our weather. Last weekend of July, Saturday and Sunday, we saw triple digits. Saturday, 101 degrees. That was a record high. Sunday wasn't a record high, but it was hotter than Saturday for the last weekend of July. 102 degrees. The record was 103 that day. Look at the first weekend of August. The first weekend of August, we saw high temperatures only in the 70s. We didn't even get up to 80 degrees in Charlotte on Saturday and Sunday to start the first weekend of July. Saturday, 74, Sunday, 76. So why such a dramatic change in temperatures? And it's not just as simple as a cold front came through. It's the classic cold air damming setup that we see here in the Carolinas. Growing up as a kid here in the Carolinas, I was always just kind of like, how in the world are we seeing these big dramatic shifts in temperature? And it's because of this cold air damming pattern. Let me show you what it looks like here on the screen. We call this also a wedge pattern because what's happening is we've got high pressure north of our region. That northerly air is coming down from the north, and it's cooler air as well, because you're bringing cool air down from the north, and that cool air is crashing up against the Appalachian Mountains. Now, that cool air can't rise over the mountains, so the cool air gets wedged. That's why we call it a wedge pattern as well. It gets wedged up against the mountains. That cool air sinks down to the surface, and that's why we have a lot of cool air down towards the surface, and temperatures are really struggling to rise. However, we also have the rain, the clouds, the damp conditions we're dealing with because we have the cool air at the surface here, but you've got warm, moist air riding over top of that cooler air, and that's what's leading to your clouds, your rain, your condensation, and just leading to a lot of yucky conditions outdoors. Now, we can see this set up in the winter too, and when we see this set up in the winter, it can actually lead to some of our big winter storms here in the Carolinas because you can get all kinds of different precipitation with this. So every precipitation starts as snow right here in the upper levels. However, when you melt that snow down, let's say it's an 80-degree day and you're melting the snow down into rain, it's going to stay rain all the way down to the surface because temperatures are well above freezing at the surface. But remember, in this setup that we have here, we've got cooler air down at the surface, warm, moist air riding over top of that. So what ends up happening is you get snow will come down. It'll run into what we call a warm nose, where you have that warm air that's overriding the cooler air. That warm air melts that snow in the rain, and then that rain, it meets that shallow cold air down at the surface because of this wedge pattern as that cold air sinks and spreads out. So then that rain can turn to freezing rain or it can turn to sleet. And that's how you get your different types of precipitation, usually due to this setup here in the Carolinas. So yeah, a dramatic change in our weather pattern is because of what we call cold air damming or a wedge pattern here in the Carolinas. So we've discussed that. I do think things will warm back up eventually as soon as what we call eroding this wedge away. As soon as we erode it away and get more warmer air down to the surface, things will change. We'll get back in the 80s again, and we'll start to feel like summer again with more hot and humid air. It's going to be a while until we get rid of the summer temperatures. We can have 90s all the way through early October. The latest we've seen a 90-degree high was October 13th back in the 1950s. Now, more to chat about. The tropics. Yes, the tropics are alive. They've been very quiet here recently. But now that we're seeing systems come off the coast of Africa, I want to just let you know, be careful what you see on social media. Because social media, I feel like it is the danger of weather, because everybody has access to weather models nowadays. Everybody has access to the data that I should say everything that we can see as meteorologists, but for the most part, everybody has access to it. They can post whatever they want on social media, scare the public or whatnot. But I want to talk about hurricane lead time today. Hurricane lead time is important because when we have these tropical waves coming all the way off the coast of Africa, well to our west there, that is an 8 to 10 day lead time, meaning that storms that are coming off the coast of Africa and the waves that are coming off the coast of Africa, when they form in the tropical systems out in the eastern Atlantic, they're still 10 plus days away. Model data does not handle hurricanes well, sometimes 4 or 5 days out, let alone 2 weeks out. So systems that are coming off, the waves that are coming off the coast of Africa, whenever you see that, just know it's not necessarily an immediate threat to the country, to the U.S. or to the Bahamas and to the Lesser Antilles and Puerto Rico. You've got to give it a little bit more time to develop. Let the storm form first of all, but then just kind of, tune into more credible information and find a credible meteorologist that you like to follow. Hopefully us here at Queen City News, because we'll always give you credible information, down to earth, let you know what's happening, being honest with you. And we will let you know if a storm's going to be a threat as soon as we know it's going to be a threat. So yeah, hurricane lead time, when it's 8 to 10 days out there in the far eastern Atlantic, it's far too early to start talking about details. The only thing we'll talk about when it's that far out in the eastern Atlantic is, hey, it has a chance of forming, or it doesn't have a chance of forming. Is it going to form further south or form north? That's really the only thing we can really get into when a storm's that far out. Now, when we start getting into more of the 4 to 5 day category, 3 to 4 days, that's when we could start, getting a little bit more low to medium confidence of, okay, we've got a chance of this being a threat here to not only the U.S., but maybe the Carolinas. And we can't really talk about big time details with it, but we can at least let you know there's a storm possibly coming. Start getting prepared for maybe that being an issue. So again, just know a lot of waves are going to be coming off the coast of Africa around this time in August and September. They're not really going to be as homegrown as they've been over the last couple of months for hurricane season. So I just want you to be aware of that. And I'll show you kind of another chart too. It really shows this well. I know there's a lot of words on this. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but just know 6+ days, too soon to make decisions. Day 5, that's when we can start getting into that cone of uncertainty. And that's when it's time to just have caution, pay attention. And then by day 3, day 4, that's when we're starting to really prepare for maybe some impacts here. So just know storms that are far out are not necessarily a threat immediately. I also want to talk about the average storm dates, because hurricane season, it's been kind of quiet here recently, but hurricane season has been already pretty active this year. We had our first named storm on June 24th this year. The average for the first named storm is June 20th for the Atlantic season. We saw Barry form in the Gulf on June 29th. July 17th is the average for the second named storm, so almost a month before that. July 5th was our third named storm in Chantal, which brought significant impacts. The average named storm for your third named storm is August 3rd. So that was about a month ahead of time, Chantal was, and it caused major issues, even unfortunately caused fatalities here in North Carolina, central North Carolina, due to flooding. Barry kind of helped aid indirectly a lot of moisture to some of those hill country floods in Texas. And then August 15th, that's our fourth named storm average date. And we saw it on August 3rd with Tropical Storm Dexter forming in the northern Atlantic. I still expect a pretty active hurricane season, folks. And again, during this time of year, it's right around August, September, October. Those are our peak 3 months for hurricane season. So notice as we get to about early September, September 10th, and so on, notice how this chart goes gradually up, meaning that we are seeing more named storms around this time of year, because that's when the water is the hottest. That's when we tend to have the less shear, and we tend to have more ingredients. Same thing with hurricane activity. This is looking at activity for hurricanes. Look at how it goes up right around August, September, especially the middle of September. That's what we consider the peak of hurricane season. So We've talked about the tropics. We've talked about the dramatic cool down, how all this is happening. But now we've got to talk about fish. I'm going to head outside in the rain, going to get a jacket on. We're heading to Salisbury City Park coming up in our next segment. And we're going to be talking with Casey Jo Beer with the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. And she's going to speak with us about how fish are dealing with the warmer summers and how these higher or early warm-ups are also leading to changes in not only our fishing experience, but the fish's health themselves and how that could impact us in the future. We'll be talking with her in the next block at Salisbury City Park. Stick with us. You're watching Pinpoint Weather University here on Queen City News Plus. Welcome back into Pinpoint Weather University here on Queen City News Plus. I'm meteorologist Brandon Lawson. I'm outside now in the rain. This is a pretty rainy week so far. I'm at Salisbury City Park, the Salisbury City Lake. We're going to talk a little bit about fish here and how warmer temperatures might be impacting some of our fishing experiences and the fish themselves during the summer season. But it was a very hot July. It was the second hottest July for Charlotte. We've seen warmer Julys and warmer summers as a whole. When you look over the last 50 to 60 years, our temperatures are obviously getting warmer during the summer. And we're here with an expert. We're here with Casey Jo Beer. You came out in the rain with us today, fisheries biologist with the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. Casey, thanks for coming out with us. Doing a little fishing in the rain here. I know it's been kind of wild how we were talking about the warmer temperatures, and now we're dealing with temperatures in the 70s. But overall, the summers have been getting warmer. How does that impact the fish when it comes down to our fishing experience?
Yeah, so as temperatures get hotter, it puts a lot of stress on fish in general. Hot water can hold less oxygen, and like all animals, fish need to breathe. So with those hotter temperatures, the water can hold less oxygen, and overall it just stresses the fish out, makes them just groggier, makes them less likely to want to bite our lures and chase our bait. So especially fishing at like the middle of the day, it's really tough on these fish, really tough on the anglers to catch them. So a lot of times people will try to fish early in the morning, late in the evening, and on days where it's maybe just a little bit cooler.
So does the heat stress the fish out? I mean, I know the heat can be a lot on us in general, just being out in those heat indices of 100 degrees or so. How does the heat impact the fish's health when it comes down to their stress?
Yeah, so fish are cold-blooded. So when the water gets warmer, they get warmer, which makes their metabolic rate increase. So they're having to expend a lot of energy, and also they're trying to stay calm, so as much as they can. So on those days, you know, they're seeking out colder, deeper water because they don't want to be stressed out. They don't want to be any hotter than they have to be. So, you know, they're trying to get away from where we're fishing, essentially.
And how does that impact their ecosystem when it comes down to the warmer weather?
Yeah, so, you know, like I just said, they like that cold, deep water. So the hotter it is, the less of that water there is for them to live in. And so, really overall, it just makes the less habitat overall and just stressful on the fish.
And you were talking about some of the storms recently too. I mean, when it comes down to warmer temperatures, we tend to see more thunderstorms and more tropical systems. Again, when it comes down to climate change, we can't necessarily say a certain storm was caused by it, but Helene was another violent storm that we saw last year, and that's already impacting how you guys might be stocking fish for this upcoming winter.
Yeah, so Helene had a ton of rainfall, a ton of floods, and unfortunately it did impact some of our hatcheries and our production for trout. And so this year, whereas this lake would normally be stocked with winter trout, we call it the winter trout program. Unfortunately, this year it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do that because of those impacts to our hatcheries. So, you know, stronger, more severe storms lead to increased flooding. And that can impact the habitat up in the mountains, and it can impact us even down here in the Piedmont and in the coast where we're stocking some of these winter trout.
And you brought up trout, you know, they're definitely like the colder temperatures.
Yes.
Now, is there a fish in general that has a harder time in warmer weather than others?
So trout are like the one of the ones that comes to mind for sure. Up in the mountains where we had Helene, we saw a lot of, you know, erosion on the shoreline, a lot of trees down, and those rivers and creeks are seeing more sunlight. More sunlight means hotter temperatures, and the hotter temperatures make it more stressful on the trout to survive. So, you know, it's gonna be a rough road for those fish in the future, but as things recover, the fish will hopefully come back into those habitats if they haven't already.
And how long will it take for that recovery?
It depends so much on like the species and, which creeks. Unfortunately, some of our native fish are the ones that are pickiest with the temperatures, whereas invasive species or species that we stock that aren't native, can a lot of times be a lot more tolerant to those higher temperatures. So unfortunately, what we're seeing is these more tolerant invasive or non-native species do better than our native species.
With some of these warmer summers that we've been seeing, is there any, I'd say, advice you would give folks that do like to come out and fish, whether it's during the summer or during the winter? When it comes down to the summer, though, what kind of advice would you give folks that are trying to get out and have a good day?
Yeah, so if possible, try to fish early in the morning, late in the evening, when the fish are least stressed out, it's not as hot. If you do catch fish and they seem like they're stressed out and it's legal to take them, you should probably take them. There's some species that just won't recover. So even if you're releasing them, they won't survive. So, fish responsibly. Fish because you want to be out there fishing. Fish at a time where you think you can release fish alive if you want to do that. And try to handle them as little as possible, get them back in the water as quickly as possible. They're stressed out and, handling them, taking 10 pictures for Instagram, try to limit to one. Just take one picture and get that fish back in the water as quickly as possible.
And it's all about taking care of our resources, right?
Yeah,
and now you guys are going to be, I assume, doing some stocking coming up here as we go closer to the fall and the winter. What, I'd say, lakes around this general area do you know of that we might be doing more stocking of this coming up this winter?
Yeah, so actually the winter trout program is one of the only ones that we stock in the winter. We stock a lot of fish in kind of early spring, early summer, and we're stocking those fish at a small size because we're actually stocking them kind of when they would naturally be there anyways. So with the spawning, so it just depends on the lake and where we're stocking, but we stock a lot of striped bass, hybrid striped bass. In a lot of our community fishing lakes, such as this one, we stock a lot of like channel catfish, and those just give anglers another opportunity to come out and catch fish.
All right, Casey, let's head inside a little bit, get some shelter. I know it's been raining. We'll talk a little bit coming up on the other side of the break. You're watching Pinpoint Weather University here on Queen City News Plus. We'll be right back here from Salisbury City Lake in just a moment. Welcome back into Pinpoint Weather University. I'm meteorologist Brad Lawson here at Queen City News Plus, and we are here still at Salisbury City Park, to Salisbury City Lake here. We had to get a little shelter. It's a rainy day. It's been gloomy. It's been in the 70s for much of the week, and now we're trying to get a little bit of shelter away from the rain. Still with my friend Casey Jobert here with the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, fishery biologist, been doing it for a while, and we're talking about warmer temperatures. We were talking about in the last segment, and spawning. Spawning, something that we chat about when it comes down to fish as well, because it's an important process of it. What is spawning for viewers that wouldn't know, and also how is that impacted when it comes down to warmer summers?
Yeah, so spawning is how fish reproduce. In our area, most species spawn in the springtime, maybe a little bit in the early summer, and essentially it's when the male and female fish come together. The milk and the eggs will mix together and they'll become fertilized, and that will eventually make baby fish. So usually it happens in the spring and it's queued up, and the fish are kind of know that it's time to go based on the water temperatures. And with that, anglers know when to go fishing.
And I was gonna mention, so like, how does the warmer weather interrupt that spawning?
Yeah, so essentially when it gets so warm, they don't want to be putting a lot of energy into spawning because they're just trying to survive when it gets really hot. So hopefully all that spawning can take place in the spring, and then the temperatures get so hot the fish kind of aren't interested in doing that anymore. So with warmer temperatures, that tells the fish when to spawn, but it can also shut the spawn off when it gets too hot.
I was going to mention, so let's say it gets warmer. Let's say we have a really warm spring and temperatures warm up a little bit earlier than when they normally would.
Yeah.
Would that cause any issues for spawning for the fish?
Yeah, so sometimes what can happen is we can kind of have like a first pulse of spawning, and that kind of tells anglers and the fish, they all get out there, they do their spawn, and then the temperatures might drop back down, and then things kind of shut off for a little while, and it just makes things a little bit erratic. But yeah, it all kind of depends on the year, but sometimes those warmer temperatures can kind of make the fish start spawning earlier.
When it comes down to warmer temperatures, I've mentioned to our viewers a lot all the time. We talk about how warmer weather adds more moisture in the atmosphere. The atmosphere can hold more moisture. That in turn can lead to more heavier rainfall events. And that also is another issue for fishing as well because of pollution.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things that can happen. We have heavy rainfall. A lot of that water is going to go into a lot of our creeks, rivers, lake systems, and that waterfall can bring a lot of things. It can bring sediment, so it can, increase sedimentation and turbidity in the water, which can impact fish, and it can also, of course, bring in pollutants, runoff, and that sort of thing. It just kind of depends on where you are, how urban the area is, what kind of pollution sources there are, but it can impact fish for sure. And heavy rains even can, increase lake levels, and so where fish are spawning, where they thought they could spawn, might suddenly change. Water levels drop again. Those beds, those nests where fish were spawning could be dry.
Right. And then the health of the fish too, as well. How big a role does that play when you have that sediment that's and pollution stuff being dumped down?
Yeah, so that can all impact the health of the fish, and then warmer temperatures in itself can impact. So the more warm temperature, the hotter the water, the more susceptible fish are to having different diseases, parasites, that sort of thing. So kind of that longer window of warm water and warm temperatures makes those fish susceptible even longer. And, fish can have diseases and pathogens. We hope they don't, but if they do, they also can spread it to other fich within that body of water.
Is it always catch and release here, or is it people can?
It depends on the species and the body of water. So, always go to ncwildlife.gov, look at our regulations page, and you can check out those regulations. And remember, if you are on public waters and you're over the age of 16, you do need a fishing license for those public waters.
And I was going to say, when it comes down, let's say the fish isn't under the catch and release, when they carry those pathogens, would that be a danger to us, or do you cook those out when you're
usually? Yeah, not usually. You can always reach out to us and ask, send us pictures. You Google NC fish biologists, a whole map comes up with all the different districts, contact information. You can always send us pictures and ask us, but for the most part, when you fillet a fish, you get that muscle tissue out, which is most of the time what people want to eat. You cook it hot enough, a lot of those things are not of concern.
And climate change is a very long-range thing. When we talk about weather is what's happening now. Climate change, that's what's happening well in the future.
Yeah.
So looking well in the future, how concerned are you about fishing and their environments or ecosystems when it comes down to our warming planet?
Yeah, so for my career right now, I'm not especially worried. We're definitely keeping an eye on things. We're always out doing surveys, keeping an eye on how our fish populations are doing. But yeah, long term, my kids fishing, their kids fishing, it is something to be concerned about because as I mentioned before, some of our native species can't handle hotter temperatures. And if they lose their habitat that they're able to live in, we're going to end up getting a lot of, invasive species or non-native species take over. That always can happen. So that is something to be concerned about. And something that we, we'll keep an eye on.
And what's the most concerning thing? Would you say it's the warmer temperatures, the rain, or just kind of all of it combined?
Really that combined effect, So these species have been out here for thousands and thousands of years. They've seen hurricanes. They've seen, years where there's more water, years where there's less water, years where there's hotter temperatures, less temperatures. But, those long-term changes and how well they can adapt and how quickly they can adapt really is the concern. And so if they're, die of 1,000 swords, that saying is, that's where we kind of can get more concerned when they've got invasive species, heavy rainfall, big weather events, hotter temperatures. It's like, how many things can they handle?
Okay, answer maybe better luck today. We didn't catch anything.
I know.
You think cooler weather, rain, maybe have better luck. Just
not today. That's why they call it fishing, not catching.
That's exactly it. Hopefully you guys will have better luck whenever you get out to your body of water. That's going to do it for this edition of Pinpoint Weather University here on Queen City News Plus. Casey Joubert with the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission, fisheries biologist, the expert coming out chatting with us a little bit today. No concern about fish now, but down the line, definitely something you guys are keeping an eye on. Thanks again, Casey, for coming out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time here on Pinpoint Weather University for Queen City News Plus.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.